Have you ever felt lost amidst the pain and difficulties of life? Often we face challenges that seem insurmountable, and hope seems to fade away. But there is a promise that sustains our hearts. Trust in God's timing. He not only sees your pain, but also hears every silent cry you make. More than that, He is tirelessly working in your favor, even when everything seems to be against you. Today, let's understand how we can find peace and hope by trusting in divine timing. God made us. He invented us. Just as a man invents an engine, a car is made to run on gasoline and doesn't function properly with anything else. In the same way, God designed the human machine to function with Himself. He is the fuel that our spirits were designed to burn, or the food that our spirits were designed to feed on. There is no other. When we recognize that God is essential to our well-being, we understand that He is the source of true happiness and peace. Without Him, our lives are incomplete, always seeking something more. Therefore, it is vital that we turn to God, not only in times of need, but as a constant part of our lives. Often we try to find happiness and peace in material things, in relationships, or in personal achievements. However, these attempts are in vain, as we are seeking satisfaction in the wrong places. It's like trying to make a car run on water instead of gasoline. When we recognize that God is essential to our well-being, we understand that He is the source of true happiness and peace. Without Him, our lives are incomplete, always seeking something more. Therefore, it is vital that we turn to God, not only in times of need, but as a constant part of our lives. Furthermore, understanding that we were created to be in communion with God changes our perspective on life. Instead of relentlessly pursuing material possessions and earthly accomplishments, we begin to value our relationship with the Creator. This relationship provides us with a joy and peace that transcend worldly circumstances. With God in our lives, we find purpose and direction, knowing that we are following the perfect plan He has for us. Finally, as we deeply connect with God, we experience an internal transformation. He shapes and guides us, strengthening our character and empowering us to face life's challenges with confidence and serenity. God's presence in us makes us more loving, compassionate, and resilient. It is this divine connection that allows us to live fully, regardless of the adversities we face. God is the source of everything we need, and it is only in Him that we find true fulfillment. God is attentive to every tear you have shed and every silent plea you have made. He knows the depth of your suffering and the cries of your heart. Even in the moments when we feel most alone and helpless, God is by our side, observing and listening to every groan of pain and every unspoken prayer. His presence is constant, even when we do not perceive it. Often, pain and suffering can make us feel isolated and forgotten. We may wonder if God really cares, or if He is paying attention to our struggles. However, the Scriptures assure us that He is deeply aware of every detail of our lives. In Psalms 56, verse 8, it is written, "You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle, are they not in your book?" This shows us that God values every tear we shed and every struggle we face. In moments of despair, it is crucial to remember that God not only sees our pain, but also acts in our favor. He is a God of compassion and love, who deeply cares about the well-being of His children. Although we may not understand the purpose of our suffering at the moment, we can trust that God is working in our lives in ways that go beyond our understanding. His presence offers comfort and hope, even in the darkest moments. Furthermore, the realization that God is attentive to our tears encourages us to be honest and vulnerable in our communication with Him. We don't need to hide our pain or pretend that everything is fine. God wants us to approach Him with all our concerns and anxieties, knowing that He understands us perfectly. In 1 Peter 5:7, we are instructed to cast all our anxieties on Him because He cares for us. Finally, remembering that God sees and hears our suffering can strengthen our faith and give us courage to continue. Even when the answer to our prayers seems delayed, we can trust that God is with us, walking beside us and sustaining us. He never abandons us, and His faithfulness is eternal. In the midst of pain, we can find peace and comfort in the certainty that God is attentive to all our tears and silent pleas. Life can be extremely challenging at times, and we all go through moments of exhaustion when our strength seems to disappear and our spirits feel low. In those moments of extreme tiredness, it is essential to remember that we are not alone. God is by our side, offering his rest and renewal. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus invites us, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." This invitation reminds us that, regardless of the weight of our problems, we can find relief and comfort in God. He calls us to cast our worries upon him, promising to carry our burdens and give us the rest we so desperately need. When we face the toughest battles, it can be challenging to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The weight of our problems can become unbearable, and it is easy to feel lost and lonely. However, it is in these moments that we need to hold on to God's promise. He never abandons us and is always present, even when we cannot feel his presence. His strength is perfected in our weakness, and he gives us the ability to continue, even when we think we have no more strength. Remembering that God is with us in moments of exhaustion gives us the courage to move forward. We can cry out to him in prayer, asking for strength and renewal, trusting that he will hear us. In Isaiah 40:29-31, we read, "He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This promise gives us hope and reminds us that, by waiting on the Lord, our strength will be renewed. Therefore, in moments of greatest exhaustion, we should turn to God, trusting that he is with us and will sustain us. We are not alone, and with his help, we can overcome any challenge we face. His presence gives us peace and the certainty that, even in the toughest hours, he is working in our lives, strengthening us and guiding us to victory. Trusting in God is a continuous process that must be renewed daily. As C.S. Lewis mentions in Mere Christianity, trusting in God must start all over again every day, as if nothing had been done before. This daily renewal of trust is essential, as each new day brings its own challenges and opportunities to rely on God's faithfulness. In moments when it seems like nothing is changing and our prayers seem unanswered, it is easy to become discouraged and lose hope. However, it is precisely in these moments that we need to remember God's constancy and faithfulness. He sees our pain and hears our cry, and although we may not immediately see the answers to our prayers, we can trust that he is working in our favor, often in ways we cannot comprehend. The daily renewal of our trust in God also involves the practice of gratitude. By reflecting on the blessings we have already received and recognizing the ways in which God has been faithful in our lives, we strengthen our faith and our ability to trust him for the future. Gratitude transforms our perspective, helping us to see God's hand in every aspect of our life, even in the small things. Finally, trusting in God gives us peace and strength to face each day with hope. When we fully surrender to him, we rest in the certainty that he has a perfect plan for us and that he is in control of all things. With each new day, we can renew our faith and trust, knowing that God is faithful and that his presence and provision will accompany us every step of the way. Waiting for God's timing can be one of the most difficult tasks for a Christian, but it is essential to fully experience his blessings. Patience is a virtue that allows us to trust in God's perfect plan, even when we cannot see what he is doing. In Lamentations 3:25-26 we read, "The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." Waiting helps us grow in faith and trust. During this time, God works in our hearts, shaping and preparing us for the blessings to come. Often, the waiting period is a time of refinement, where we learn to depend completely on God and seek his will above our own desires. This process makes us stronger and more resilient, ready to receive what he has in store for us. A powerful example of waiting on God's timing is the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, but this promise took years to fulfill. During this time of waiting, Abraham and Sarah faced doubts and challenges, but in the end, they saw God's faithfulness when Isaac was born. This story reminds us that even when it seems like God is taking a long time, his timing is perfect and he fulfills his promises. Waiting also teaches us to have an eternal perspective. Instead of focusing only on immediate circumstances, we learn to see beyond the present and trust that God is orchestrating everything for our good. Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This trust gives us peace and hope, even during periods of uncertainty. Therefore, as we wait for God's perfect timing, we can be certain that he is working in our lives in ways that go beyond our understanding. Our task is to trust, be patient, and remain faithful, knowing that his promises are true and he is faithful to fulfill them in his perfect timing. Waiting periods often seem endless and purposeless, but they are actually times of preparation and growth. During these moments, God is working in our lives in ways we may not immediately see. He is shaping us, refining our character, and strengthening our faith. It is in this process of waiting that we learn valuable lessons and become more like Christ. The story of Joseph in the book of Genesis illustrates this truth well. Joseph spent years in prison and as a slave before becoming second in command in Egypt. During this time, God was preparing Joseph for the great responsibility he would have in the future. Every challenge and every moment of waiting were essential for his growth and development. Just like Joseph, we can trust that our waiting periods have a greater purpose in God's plan. Waiting can be frustrating, especially in a society that values instant gratification. However, it is important to remember that God's timing is perfect and he never leaves us waiting without reason. In Isaiah 40:31, we are encouraged, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This verse reminds us that by waiting on God, our strength is renewed and we are empowered to face any challenge. Therefore, instead of seeing waiting as wasted time, we should see it as an opportunity to grow spiritually and prepare for what God has in store for us. The patience and faith we develop during these periods are invaluable and equip us to live according to God's purpose. Let us trust that he is in control and that, in due time, his promises will be fulfilled perfectly. It is easy to feel discouraged and question if God is hearing our prayers when we do not see an immediate answer. However, the Bible teaches us that God is always at work, even when we cannot see. He operates behind the scenes, orchestrating everything according to his perfect plan. In Romans 8:28, we are reminded, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." The story of Joseph is a powerful example of this truth. While Joseph was imprisoned and seemingly forgotten, God was preparing the way for him to become a key figure in Egypt, saving many lives during a great famine. Even in moments of silence, God was active, working in the details to fulfill his purposes. Thus, we can be certain that even when God seems silent, he is taking care of us and working for our good. When we are in a season of waiting or facing difficulties, it is essential to maintain our faith and trust that God is in control. He sees the bigger picture and knows what is best for us, even when we don't understand his actions. In Isaiah 55:8-9, God says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This verse reminds us that God's wisdom is infinite and that we can trust in his plan. Therefore, in moments when we cannot see God's hand, we must remember that he is silently working in our favor. Our task is to continue to trust him, keep our faith strong, and patiently wait for his perfect timing. God is faithful, and his promises never fail. He is always present, working behind the scenes, and at the right moment, he will reveal his marvelous works in our lives. In a society that values instant gratification, patience may seem like a forgotten virtue. However, the Bible teaches us that patience is crucial for the Christian life. Waiting on God and trusting in his timing helps us develop a deeper and more resilient faith. James 5:7-8 encourages us, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it, until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand." Patience is not a passive stance, but an act of active faith. When we choose to wait on God, we are declaring our trust in His wisdom and provision. This kind of waiting transforms us, strengthening our spirituality and teaching us to depend more deeply on God. As Romans 5 verse 3 through 4 states, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. During seasons of waiting, we may feel like we are missing out on opportunities or that God is not hearing our prayers. However, these moments are opportunities to grow in patience and trust. By holding on to our faith, even when answers are delayed, we are cultivating a closer relationship with God and learning to rest in His promises. Therefore, when facing times of waiting and uncertainty, let us remember that patience is a gift from God that strengthens us and prepares us for His blessings. We should see these periods not as wasted time, but as a time of growth and preparation. Let us trust that God is in control and that He will use our patience to shape and guide us toward His perfect purpose for our lives. One of the most challenging struggles we face as Christians is understanding God's timing. Sometimes, when our prayers seem unanswered, we may feel like God is ignoring us or doesn't care. However, it is crucial to understand that God's delays are not denials. As Jesus demonstrated when He raised Lazarus from the dead, God's timing is perfect and serves a greater purpose. The story of Lazarus is a powerful example of this. When Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, He deliberately delayed his arrival. During that time, Lazarus died, and his family was mourning and confused about why Jesus hadn't come immediately. However, when Jesus arrived and raised Lazarus, He demonstrated His authority over death and revealed God's glory in a way that wouldn't have been possible without that delay. This miracle showed that God's plans are always superior to ours. These delays often test our faith and patience. We may be tempted to doubt God or take control of the situation ourselves. However, as Isaiah 55, 8-9 reminds us, God's ways and thoughts are much higher than ours. We may not understand the reasons for the delays, but we can trust that God is working on something much greater and better than we can imagine. His vision and purpose surpass our limited understanding. Therefore, when we face delays in our lives, we must remember that God has a purpose in every moment of waiting. His delays are not denials, but opportunities for Him to work in powerful ways and for us to grow in faith and trust. We must keep our hope and trust that in God's perfect timing, we will see His promises fulfilled in ways that glorify His name and bring true spiritual growth. In a world full of turbulence and uncertainty, finding peace may seem like an impossible task. However, true peace, the one that transcends all circumstances, comes from surrendering our anxieties to God. Philippians 4, 6-7 teaches us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." When we surrender our worries to God, we are acknowledging our own limitations and divine sovereignty. This frees us from the burden of anxiety, allowing us to experience the tranquility that only God can provide. This act of surrender is a demonstration of faith, showing that we trust that God is in control and that He has a perfect plan for our lives, even when we cannot see the way ahead. The Bible is filled with promises of peace for those who trust in God. Isaiah 26:3 declares, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." This perfect peace is not the absence of problems, but the certainty that God is with us in the midst of them. It is a peace that strengthens us and gives us courage to face any challenge, knowing that we are not alone. Therefore, when we face the uncertainties and anxieties of life, we must remember to cast all our cares upon God. True peace does not come from solving all our problems, but from trusting in God and resting in His presence. By doing so, we can experience the peace that surpasses all understanding, guarding our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus, regardless of the circumstances around us. The journey of trusting in God and waiting for His timing is one of the most challenging and rewarding in the Christian life. Every aspect of this journey, from recognizing that we were created to have a relationship with God, to understanding that He is always at work even when we do not see, teaches us the depth of His love and wisdom. God knows our pains, hears our cries, and is by our side even in the toughest times. His constant presence and his promise of peace give us the strength to persevere. Throughout this reflection, we have seen how periods of waiting can be times of growth and preparation. The patience developed in these moments is a virtue that draws us closer to God and strengthens us. We have learned that God's delays are not denials, but opportunities for Him to show His power and teach us to trust more fully in His sovereignty. True peace, which surpasses all understanding, is found when we surrender our anxieties to Him and rest in His love. Our faith is constantly challenged to grow, especially in a society that values instant gratification. However, it is precisely in this tension that we discover the depth of our faith and the faithfulness of God. As children of God, we are called to trust Him, to wait patiently, and to keep our hope alive, knowing that He is working all things for our good. May we always remember that God sees our pain and hears our cry. He invites us to trust in His perfect plan and to wait for His divine timing. In doing so, we will find strength, hope, and peace, knowing that we are secure in His hands. God is faithful, and His promises are true. Let us remain steadfast in faith, trusting that in due time we will see His wonders manifested in our lives. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming videos that will bring more reflections and inspiration to your life.